Welcome to the Tissue Box Podcast. I'm your host, Pam Jordan. Your adversities, whatever you're going through, folks are on the panel. They're speaking candidly, and they're going to be transparent. And I just want to say that I'm so grateful and so thankful that you are transparent, because it's not easy sharing your stories. So the purpose of sharing stories, and we couldn't do this without people who are willing to share their stories. So again, I want to thank everyone who has been a part of the Tissue Box Podcast, and especially tonight as we do this live taping. This is my baby, and this is so important to me, because my goal, I want people to be happy. And in order to be happy, you got to deal with all the dirt that comes with that. And you got to be able to peel back the layers of the dirt. And you got to get nitty, and you got to get down to the meat of things and find out what it is, where your hurt is coming from, so you can have conversations about that hurt. Because when you don't have conversations about that hurt, you suppress that hurt, right? And it leads to chaotic relationships. It leads to chaos. It just leads to destruction. You're angry and you don't even know why you're angry. So it's super important to talk about those feelings. So right now, I want to introduce our panel for this evening. Miss Carolyn Mobley. She is an entrepreneur, a counselor, and a mentor. She's going to speak. Mark Latson, he's going to tell his story. And we have Salina Chester, I'm sorry, my bad. Salina Chester, she is in the mental health community, the mental health field, and she's going to talk about what she deals with on a regular basis, on a daily basis. So first we're going to start with Carolyn Mobley. So introduce yourself and what you do, and how long you've been doing that, and how did you get into the mental health field and counseling?
Hi, my name is Carolyn Mobley, and I am the owner and founder, president of Mobley's Enterprise. I'm an abuse advocate for women and children. How I got started, I've been doing this for over 30 years, is because of my own story, because of my own abuse. My mom was what they call street term crackhead, and is 6 siblings, 3 girls and 3 boys. And I do remember once upon a time, I was about 7 years old, when the drug dealer came to my front door. And my mom at the time didn't have any money for the drugs. But I heard her silently tell the drug dealer, I don't have any money and I do need the drugs, but I have 3 daughters, take your pick. And that did something to my whole being at that point in time. So I took my pain and my suffering and my aggravation and turn it into a multi-million-dollar business, Mobley's Enterprise. I'm a mentor, I'm a counselor, abuse advocate for women and children based upon my own story. Yes, I went to Bethune-Cookman and got my psychology degree, but my own life caused me to be sitting on this panel. So I created a business where I mentor other men, other women, other boys, girls who had been through such trauma. In the midst of being with my mom, my 2 siblings, my 2 sisters and I, we got molested, we got raped on occasion due to the fact of her drug habits. She wanted to support her drug habits. For a very long time, I was very ashamed. I was broken inside. And just like Pam said, you don't know what to do with those frustrations. You just know a bad thing has happened to you, right, but you just don't know what to do with that. I went on and I got married, and I was married to a minister for about 15 years, but he was not married to a first lady. I was something totally, totally different. I chose not to tell Mr. Mobley about my story because I thought, why would you want a first lady to have gone through that? Why would you want a first lady who's been molested? Why would you want a first lady who had been raped? Those type of things. So I did not tell him about what I had suffered. And it only brought a strain on our marriage. I never forget, we were at the table eating dinner, and his tooth hit the glass. And I almost went insane, because when my mom couldn't get the drugs, she would throw glass against the wall.
Ooh. It's a trigger.
So whenever his
trigger,
tooth
yeah.
hit the glass, I just went absolutely almost insane. Of course, it wasn't about the tooth. It wasn't about the glass. It was about the things I chose not to discuss. So I encourage each and every one of you, your spouse, your significant other, they are rightfully to know so they can better deal with you. I was an angry student in school. I was an angry adult. I was an angry first lady. How about that? An angry first lady. And no one knew it but me. But I suffered myself because I chose not to tell the story. That's when I created Mobley's Enterprise. That's when I became an abuse advocate for women and children, making a free platform for my boys and my girls and my women and men to tell their story with no judgment zone. I have over 600 clients. I've mentored and counseled over 5,000 individuals as of 2024. So that is my story. I am Carolyn Mobley, abuse advocate for women and children.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. And that had to be tough because it's not easy to be forthcoming with that
Not
information.
Not at all.
Again, you suppress it because you went through the trauma.
Yes.
And you made the mistake. You were angry.
Yes.
Did you know why you were angry, though, at the time? Did you know why, when you were lashing out and you were, trouble in school, trouble in your marriage, not being confident enough in your husband and in your marriage to come forward with him with that information and not trusting him?
Right.
But your whole life was untrustworthy,
Right.
basically.
I knew why I was angry, but fear kept my mouth closed. Fear. Because back in those days, it was hush hush. You didn't tell that it was your uncle, you didn't tell that it was your mom, you didn't tell that it was your dad. So I knew I was angry, but I just needed someone to listen. No one listened, so I lashed out. So I thought if I lashed out hard enough, someone would ask me, what's the problem? And no one did. Wow. No one did.
So you had to come to the realization on your own,
Yes.
basically.
Yes.
Through all the anger and the resentment and
Yes.
to find yourself and to understand why you were lashing out. And then when you did that, look at how you turned it around.
Sure enough. And I wouldn't have been able to unless I told my story. You have to be honest, first of all, with yourself.
Right.
I look in the mirror every day because it doesn't go away. I wake up that abused little girl every single day. It doesn't go away. But I manage it now. I manage it now. And I'm going to continue to tell my story. I can't heal everybody, but I am going to listen and listen and listen till I can't listen no more. But Thune Cookman didn't teach me this. It just gave me the knowledge. My life taught me this.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, you're welcome.
And I'm so proud of you.
Well, thank you.
I'm so proud of
Thank you.
And we're hoping through stories just like yours, someone that is going through that same thing, that same situation, will realize that they're not alone.
Right.
And they can say, okay, well, if Carolyn Mobley got through this, then surely I can.
Sure enough. Yes. I'm excited for my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, our next panel, we're going to skip the man in the middle. And go to Miss Salina Chester, who is in the mental health field as well. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Salina Chester. I am a licensed clinical therapist. My current employee is PD Mental Health. I'm a school-based therapist for Florence County District 1. So I'm over all the high schools in Florence County. I deal with the high schoolers. And first of all, I just want to commend you. And also thank you, Pam, for bringing a light to mental wellness, because one of my passions is to educate, to have a platform to educate our community and to normalize it's okay to not to be okay. Right. Especially in the African American community, we are taught to pray to Jesus, keep everything in our house, and then what happens is when we have little boys, suck it up, you're supposed to be a man. Right. But what you're teaching that little boy is not how to regulate his emotions. So as he becomes becomes a man, he shuts down. He masks his feelings because he's never shown how to be vulnerable. And it's okay to be vulnerable.
That's good.
And in that, I want to say, I'm quite sure that all of you were aware of Twitch, who was on the Alan show, and he committed suicide. And the reason, if he would have normalized saying, you know, it's okay, I need help. I need help, then that would have saved his life. So with that being said, I deal with students with depression, with anxiety, with mood disorders, who have been abused, sexually abused, who have been molested multiple times. I deal with students who self-harm. A lot of my students, they have a clinical diagnosis of one of those disorders, and so I provide therapy for them. Part of providing therapy is that I assess risk factors. On a scale of 0 to 10, I'm always asking my students, how are you feeling today? 0 meaning that you're not doing well, 10 meaning that you're doing fine. So I'm asking those questions. Do you feel suicidal today? 95%. No, let me take that back. 80% of my students have had suicidal ideations. So what I do is I put in a safety plan and I assess, okay, do you have a plan? Do you have an intent to harm? If they have a plan to intent to harm, then I get them immediately over to the hospital. I had 2 crises today. I'm not going to identify the school due to confidentiality, and I won't identify the family, but I was called in to give a clinical consultant on a student who was homicidal. The difference between suicide is when you want to harm yourself, and homicide is that when you want to harm other people. Wow. This student actually had a plan to come to school, to shoot up the school and teachers. And so what ended up happening, we had to get him over to the hospital to do an involuntary commitment to assure not only his safety, but the safety as others. I also meet with our psychiatrist, our pediatric psychiatrist that does medication management. That is very important. And let me say something about medication. I know a lot of times in our community, especially the Black community, we need to take the labels off of mental illness, or you're crazy. No, you're not crazy. It's just that you experienced some type of trauma that you need to process, that you need to deal with, that you need to work through, and sometimes medication is warranted for that. So I monitor the medication aspect of it. We also do safety plans, daily living assessment, what we call a DLA 20, which that means is when you have a mental health disorder. I was sitting listening to you, and there was a lot of shame and a lot of guilt with that trauma. I'm a DBT certified therapist, and I help students learn how to regulate their emotions. And when I was listening to you, you had talked about when your husband had a glass and it was the teeth. That was a trigger for you.
Oh, sure, of course.
And so we also teach trigger recognition and how to manage that trigger. And in managing the triggers and in managing how your level of impairment, how that impacts your level of functioning, because you shared, you were angry. And I deal with students who are so angry. And I said, okay, I understand that you're angry, but let's get to the root of it.
Right.
And in part of that, I do what I call a genogram, which looks at your family history 3 generations. Right. Sometimes behavior can be learned. There's a great debate in psychology that says, is behavior learned, or is it nature, or is it nature? Nature or nature, which means that some behaviors are learned from your environmental that influences your behaviors, and then sometimes there's a genetic component. There are certain disorders, mental health disorders, that have a genetic component to that. So in that, we look at how your symptoms of depression, of anxiety, how's that impacting your daily living? Like, are you having difficulty at school? Are you having difficulty managing your emotions? Are you having difficulty within your family cycle? And so I look at different systems and help families understand that genetic component, and also help families understand that dysfunctional behavior, whether it be abuse. We see domestic violence in a lot of our children. We see that they were exposed to domestic violence. I worked with a student who premeditated, was obsessed with another student from middle school, and we processed, and then the next day she contemplated and jumped a girl. And so now she is seeking services, and we're working through some things. So I love what I do. I'm super, super excited to be a part of your podcast. And I just want to say that it's okay to the women. It's okay to the men. It's okay not to be okay. There is help. If at any given time, and I tell my students, and one of the things I like about Florence County District 1, from middle school into high school, on the back of their ID, there's the National Hotline for Suicide Prevention. If you yourself is dealing with suicide, you can dial *988. That will save your life. That is a hotline that you can call 24/7, 365 days of the week.
But you got to be willing.
Willing.
Yes.
You got to be willing. And what we find a lot of is that for whatever reason, people aren't willing.
Right.
They're not. When you come from an abusive family, that's all you know. So when everybody else is around you acting normal, your normal is abuse.
Right. Exactly.
So how do you fight through that? How do you get through that?
Well, first by having an open dialogue, saying it's okay, and making a person feel comfortable, that there are resources, even if you yourself is struggling and you don't have insurance, to sit with a therapist. We have a pay scale at PD Mental Health. We have walk-ins. There's help. And just to be open, when you get tired of being sick and tired, and you know that, the alcohol is not doing it, the drugs is not doing it, the sex is not doing it, and when you get to your lowest point, it's okay. That's a good place to be in. Right. It's when you at your lowest, that's the place where, you know what, that's where healing comes in at. Right. Because you know what, you've tried it your way, but the pattern still exists. And I want to say that I worked with I have a family that I'm currently working with that it was an African-American family, and there was sexual abuse. And the mother, I do individual therapy, I do family therapy, and I do group therapy. And the mother had so much resentment towards her daughter, who looked like her father, that unsubconsciously she was triggered with anger, and I had to bring that out, and you get a good therapist who is culturally competent, because culture really plays a factor in terms of how we seek services. And so once again, I want to commend you, especially in our community, especially in the African community. We're taught to pray to Jesus, and don't get me wrong, I love Jesus.
Right.
I love him with all of my heart. But sometimes if you're dealing with trauma, and if it's impacting your level of functioning, your relationships, if you're bitter, if you're angry all the time, if you're having suicidal thoughts, if you feel hopeless and worthless, then you need help, and it's okay.
Very much so.
It's okay to ask for help. I'm a firm believer, when we build stronger individuals, we're building stronger families. And when we build stronger families, we're building stronger communities. And it takes all of us.
Yes,
it takes all of us. I'm sure if I can poll a question, anyone in this room, how many of you know someone or yourself suffer from depression? Raise your hand. Or anxiety. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's the shame. It's the
yes,
shame.
we have to take the shame off of mental illness, and think of it as mental wellness. Now we're seeing, when we go to the doctors, they're screening for depression.
Right.
They're screening for anxiety. right? They're screening, do you have a family history? And they're making those referrals. So the first thing what we have to do is normalize and say, it's okay not to be okay. I
Sure
need
enough.
help.
Yes.
And it's more power in being vulnerable.
Yes, it is.
Especially for our African American men. It's
yes.
more powerful to be vulnerable and say, you know what? I'm struggling right now. I need some help.
Right.
That's okay.
It's okay.
It is okay. It's more powerful to be vulnerable, to say I'm struggling right now, than it is to keep masking those feelings.
It's not going to end well.
And then what are you teaching your son?
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
How are you
that's
when
good.
you're in a relationship with a woman and there's issues? You shut down. You mask your feelings, right? Because you're taught as a man, suck it up, be a man. But what you're not teaching, we're not teaching the fact that it's okay. We have to learn how to regulate our emotions. And then also work with students who self-harm, where they cut themselves, that they have been hospitalized. I just finished a certification, a very intense certification for a dialectical behavior therapist. So I'm a DBT therapist, so I teach students how to regulate their emotions. You'd be surprised what our students face.
Oh, wow. Yes.
You'd be surprised. We're living in a whole total different day and age.
And it's so important. I'm just so I'm grateful that the counselors are in the school system.
Yes.
Yeah, because they
We
weren't in my
partner.
day.
Right.
They weren't there.
And there's resources there
Absolutely.
to help them and guide them.
Absolutely.
Because if you can't nip it in the bud, so to speak, when they're in, elementary school, middle school, high school, then they're going out into the
Sure enough. Absolutely.
into the adult world to do what?
Right.
Self-destruct.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you so much for what you do for our community.
Thank you.
And yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
All right.
And now we're going to get to the man in the middle, Mr. Mark Ladson. He's going to share his story. So we're going to talk about your trauma, and I want you to be just as honest and transparent as you possibly can, and whatever you feel comfortable with. So,
Of course.
let's introduce yourself and tell
Hi.
who you are. And
My name is Mark Latson. My spiritual name is Mawale. And that name came about because of my trauma. There's a story behind that. But first of all, I'd like to congratulate you. Happy birthday.
thank you.
Congratulations on your podcast. This is much needed in our community, especially for men, because we suffer in silence. And my last trauma, which was the greatest trauma of my life, I never realized that I began to heal after this trauma. I went back and healed some childhood traumas
Oh, yeah.
that
God.
I had never dealt with. And
You didn't even realize it.
I didn't realize it. And that trauma was the breakup of my parents at an early age. Out of 5 children, I was the only one that told my mother I wanted to live with my father. And being a young child, I love my mother, I love my father. It never really realized what, I never was concerned or never really realized how that made her feel, her baby wanting to leave. And I never had that conversation with her as a man, as I grew up. And it bothered me for, I suffered in silence, I never had that conversation with any of my siblings.
Wow.
And I've had that conversation with my wife, who's my rock. She has been there for me through all of this. And when I'm going to get to the trauma that triggered my healing, May the 2nd, 2019, left my cousin's house. Normal night of shooting pool, had a couple of drinks, nothing out of the unusual. On my way home, the next thing I know, I wake up with a police officer in my face. I'm in a ditch with the car, and he's telling the officer told me, the lady officer said, you know, that's what happens when you drink and drive, somebody dies. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm confused. I felt the pain in my foot. I had a broken foot, a fractured wrist. I end up in the hospital. I'm calling my wife. Babe, what happened? What happened? You know, I'm telling them I need to call my wife. Please call my wife. They finally get in touch with her, and I'm telling her, baby, somebody died. She didn't know at the time. She's like, no. I'm like, yes, I'm telling you, the officer said somebody died. So I'm dealing with this. My actions cost somebody their life.
Wow.
Not my intentions.
Right.
My actions.
Right.
So I had to sit with this, and it in my gut, and this just everything went through my mind. Here I am, retired. You know, I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about my wife, my children. What have I done? You know, shame, guilt, angry. I went through all these emotions,
Absolutely.
and COVID was actually a blessing for me. And I'm going to tell you why. Around that time, well, first of all, I had a double trauma because I came home from the hospital like 3 or 4 days after I come home from the hospital, my best friend, my closest brother, passed. So I'm dealing with all these emotions on top of this, and I'm asking God, why did you let me live?
Oh, no.
That's how much it hurt. I didn't want to live.
Wow.
And I was like, why? Why did you let me live? Because this is too much. But the one thing I realized after the healing, that God will never give you too much.
All right.
And God chose me because God knew that whatever I went through, God put me through for a reason.
Right.
I had to figure that reason out.
Right. Right.
So the way COVID was a blessing for me, because during this time, the courts shut down. I was supposed to go to court. I was supposed to be sentenced, all of that. I'm sitting at home with my family, nothing moving. So I used this time to go within and meditate and pray.
Excellent.
And I ended up writing a book during this time. I have a book on Amazon called A Spiritual Path to Your Higher Power. And to your inner self, yes. Yeah.
How did
So-
you dig out of that? How
Well,
With you at your worst, at your lowest,
at my lowest,
and when you found yourself asking God, why did you let me live?
yes.
That's hard for me to
Yes.
hear.
That's
yes.
big. That's
That's
big.
that's major. So to get from there to where you are now,
Yes. Support, my wife, my family, the loved ones around me and my faith in God, I knew that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, I've been running all my life. I've been running. And I really had to turn around and face myself.
wow,
You know, for the first time, I'm 62 years old now. This happened when I was 58, 59. I had to turn around and face myself.
wow.
You know, and
Did you like what?
I didn't
see
like
in the mirror?
I didn't like at that moment. I didn't like what I had been,
Right. Right. Makes sense.
and God showed me who I was being, and God showed me that this wasn't the only time that, dude, you were here for a reason because you wouldn't be here.
Right.
If I didn't have something for you,
That
you would
has to
not be here.
A revelation,
Yeah,
just
so-
like a light
yeah,
bulb
yeah.
moment.
So when and this is true, my wife can attest to it. I told her I'm gonna write a book. It's gonna be 12 chapters, and I don't know what I'm writing, but God gave me the name of. After I finish a chapter, boom, meditation. The next one would come.
Right. Right.
That's how he moves.
And
Yes,
I went
yeah.
straight through, wrote 12 chapters, and I didn't know nothing about getting a book published.
right.
I got it published, and I'm like, wow, well, all of this is happening while I'm sitting at home waiting to go to jail.
Oh.
So, and my family being supportive. I mean, when I went to court, when the time came when I finally went to court, I was blown away because the courtroom was so packed with supporters, family and friends, and people just came. They had to open up another courtroom.
Wow.
Because it wasn't enough room for people, and I was shocked. I had no idea these many people were going to show up on my behalf. And what people was telling me is, look, dude, I know you, and I know that's not you. I know your character. I know who you are. That's why I'm here. My attorney said, man, I've never seen nothing like this. He said, if I was in trouble, I wouldn't have that many people show up for me. So God was showing me that, you know.
I got you.
Right, I got you. So
how that had to put a strain on your marriage, right?
yeah. Well, it did.
How did you get through that?
Well, I'll tell you, one day at a time, because she had more faith. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself.
All right.
Amen.
So when they say behind every good man there's a good woman,
Oh yeah.
All right now.
I'm a living testament of that. And my wife has been there for me every step of the way. When I wanted to give up, she wouldn't let me give up. She pushed me to where I am today. She's like, no, it's going to be all right, no matter what. And I'm looking, babe, I messed up this. No. She's like, no, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And when I saw how strong she was being,
All right.
I had no choice but to be strong.
Amen. That's it. That's it.
She was giving you positive affirmation.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And when I looked at my son, and I seen a change in him, and I know this is how God works, because what I went through changed him completely. He turned into a total different personality. I mean, right now he has a child, bought a home, and I didn't know where he was going in life. But when I had that conversation with him and I told him, look, you got to man up because I'm going away. And he took it to
That had to
heart.
be tough.
And
Yeah.
you know, my daughter, she couldn't come to court because I knew I told her, I knew I wasn't coming home. My wife held out hope. She was like, well, no, maybe, but I knew because God told me.
Right.
You going away. And I knew everything was for a reason, because at this time I had went inside. I did my meditation. I did my prayers, and I accepted. I sat with it. I was able to accept, like I said, when I faced myself, I was able to accept who I was for the first time. Wow. And I was able to look in that mirror and be okay with it.
All right.
Yeah.
And the
Amen.
more I told my story, the lighter I got.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The better
Absolutely.
I felt.
Right.
I
That
went.
shame and guilt
Yeah.
started to release.
I went to AA meetings.
Yeah.
And when I first went in there, I was like, man, I didn't. AA, come on, man. I've been drinking all my life.
Right.
So this is what I do, you know.
Yeah.
But when I got in there, God spoke, and I said, okay, I'm gonna have an open mind.
Right.
And I said, okay, I'm gonna go in with an open mind. And boy, I tell you, one of the best things I ever did.
Right.
Because being in a safe space
Right.
to
Yeah.
tell your story.
Yes.
See, everybody doesn't deserve an explanation,
Sure.
but the people in your life do.
Yes.
Oh.
Absolutely.
And
That's
when
good.
you find
That's
a
good.
safe space that you can get it out
Yes.
and feel good about
Right.
telling it without judgment,
Correct.
Right.
without, the shame, the guilt, you was like, the more you tell it, sharing is caring. The more you tell it, you're helping yourself, but you're also helping
Absolutely.
somebody else.
Absolutely.
And I learned so much through AA that I was like, wow, I was thankful. I'm still friends with the lady from AA, for the program I went to, counselor. She checks on me. I've just been blessed. I had help from a friend of mine who started a program called a Step Ahead program for years. He does charity work in Africa and all over the place. He heard what had happened to me, and he reached out to my wife and said, hey, is it okay, if I have some people write him? And she's like, sure, So the lady today, Tana Brown, I call my spiritual sister. She wrote me, this woman wrote me, I didn't know her from a can of paint.
Wow.
This lady wrote me every week. I got a letter from her and encouraging me, saying, and I'm like, who is this lady? She don't know me. Why does she care?
Right.
But every week there was a letter. And sometimes I, when I was feeling low, I would get her letter. And she would have some inspiration in there, some writings. And I'm like, you know, this is nothing but God working.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
And he will. You just have to let him.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're friends today. We're close today. A lot of good has come out of my trauma. A lot of good, and when I mean a lot of good, like being able to go back and deal with childhood trauma for the
Yes.
first time,
Yes.
Right.
and to release it.
Wow.
But see, but before you release it, you have to own it.
That's it right
Yeah. That's it.
You have to own it.
Yeah.
You have to man up and say, look,
Yeah.
this,
If you don't-
this is
Look,
me.
bruh.
I messed up.
If you don't
this
own
is who
it,
I am, and it may not be pretty. I'm ugly right now.
Right. And
Okay.
it's okay for that.
And I've had conversations with people, and they like, how do you feel, man? Man, you killed somebody. And I'm like, wait a minute. I said, no. I didn't kill anybody. My intentions was to go home. Accident happened. I mean, that wasn't my intention. So don't put that on me.
Right. Right.
You know, what happened, happened. I owned it.
Right.
I owned it. Yes, I made a bad choice. I got behind the wheel after consuming alcohol, and I own that. And whatever happened, happened. But believe me, when you're able to sit with it and cry and feel that pain, I mean, we are taught to not show. I cry all the time. I'm gonna tell you. I think about my brother. I tell you, who was my best friend. I post stuff on Facebook because me and him, we grilled together, we fished together, we did everything together. And when he's on my heart and talking to me, I get out there on that grill and I'll post something and I'll speak his name because I promised to keep his name alive.
Right.
And I cry. There's no shame in crying.
No,
That's
no.
right.
No, no, not
I
at all.
mean, I'm human. I own mine.
Right.
So,
Right.
I
So
mean,
your message to, say, men out there who are struggling with their feelings, with their emotions, not sure of how to express themselves because they're dealing with whatever trauma. What would be your message to them if you had one sitting right in front of you right now, going through some of the same type traumas? What would you say to them? What would be your best advice?
my best advice would be, first of all, I would say, brother, I love you. Brother, I see you. And whatever you're going through, find a safe space. If you don't feel safe with me, find somebody you do feel safe with. There's help out here. And
Just talk.
have that conversation. Let it out. Cry.
Yes. Yes.
Hug somebody. And I'm going to tell you, when I was away in college,
Yeah.
I ran into a lot of young brothers who just wanted to be heard
Yeah.
with no judgment. It was some guys that was in, for some, I won't mention names, I won't mention what they're in there for, but I listened to them.
Yeah.
And when you sit there and listen to them, you understand it's like, wow, dude, I mean, they come from broken homes. They come from, places where they didn't have the, a chance to even start off. So,
Yeah.
and all they want to do is be heard.
Yeah.
And tell them that, man, it's going to be all right. Dude, you can, and when I tell my story, they look at me like, man, how you 50-something years old. My life would be over. Would you? And I'm like, no. As long as you got breath in your body
Amen.
and you deal with the issue and live in the moment, live in the now, because that's all we have.
That's all we have.
We don't have yesterday, we don't have tomorrow. But when you bring yourself into the now, that's what God is.
Yes.
That's what God's going to talk to you
Right.
and walk with you and get you through your hardest. And it's not about the fall; it's about the comeback.
All
That's right.
You
Come on.
Yeah.
Get up.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Get up. No matter how many times you fall, just get right back up.
Yeah,
That's
because
right.
the harder you fall, that means the greater the prize is
And that's a
when
fact.
you get up.
Yeah.
Amen.
And I'm a walking testament to that because, like I say, this is, man, I've been blessed. I had blessings that I didn't even realize until I stopped running.
Right. All
Until
right.
I
now.
stopped running and face turn around and face myself. And I realized that God has been blessing me abundantly all my life.
Yeah.
But
So would you say that you are healed?
I'm healing because the process, the work never stops.
No.
That's right.
You see, because once you've been traumatized and once you've been through the trauma, it's not like, oh, okay, I go to the doctor and get a shot.
fixing.
No,
It's no fixing.
it's a lifetime journey,
it is.
and you have to be grateful, gratitude.
Yes.
Remain grateful, stay in gratitude.
Yeah, like
And-
Carolyn said, you got to manage it.
You got to manage it.
Yeah. You have to.
Wakes up with you every day.
Yeah, because triggers.
Right.
Triggers. It can be, for me, a trigger is if I'm sitting at home and I had a great day, I'm sitting at home, the news comes on, and the first thing they show is, a fatal accident. And that's a trigger for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That brings back all those
Everything.
emotions, everything I
Yeah.
felt.
Yeah.
But with me knowing how to deal with that, and like I say, and being able to, if I had never talked about it,
All right.
thing.
That's the thing.
if I saw something like that, I would be depressed for weeks,
Right.
Right.
and would don't even want
down.
to talk to nobody. Don't want, I would just want to curl up in the bed for a few days or whatever. But the more I tell my story, the lighter it gets, the better I feel.
Amen.
So much for that.
Yeah,
And what
yeah.
you just described, when a person experiences trauma, and after they go through their healing process, what you just described is post-traumatic
Sure enough.
growth.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And what that is when you can take your trauma and learn from your trauma and use your trauma to turn your pain into purpose.
Sure enough.
That's growth.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we want to commend
Yes.
you, my brother.
Yes.
We want to commend you. And there's one more thing that I wanted to share. When you said you felt safe in an environment where you felt safe that you wasn't going to be judged, what you were describing was a therapeutic environment, and that's the difference. That's the
That is the
power
biggest
of
difference.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the power of counseling.
Right.
When you can tell your story and be raw and be real and be transparent and take off the mask, that's therapeutic.
Sure. And once he got there, he was saying that, not me, I've been drinking all my life. But once you start, you understood your assignment.
Yes.
You understood
Yes.
your purpose of being there.
Yes.
Yes.
Wasn't this good? Oh. Thank you all so much for being a part of this panel and this episode of The Tissue Box. Make sure you subscribe to thetissuebox.com. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Google, we're everywhere, thetissuebox.com. Subscribe and make sure you tune in. Make sure you grab that merch on thetissuebox.com and support the cause. Thank you again. Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being transparent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe, leave rating, and a review. And let's stay connected. Visit thetissuebox.com to join our mailing list. Until next time.